Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is where you're at. Welcome to Collider Dailies. I'm John Aljets, and I'm joined by
Maggie Lovett.
Maggie. How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty good. I am still emotionally processing X-Men 97, and that's basically all that my brain is capable of even thinking about right
That's
now.
pretty much all you've been tweeting about. You've been in a bit of a tweeting firestorm since the episode came out.
I have a lot of
Particularly
thoughts and
about
a lot of
something that we
feelings.
will probably be talking about at some point. Uh yeah. So I as soon as I got done watching the episode, I was like, "Oh, Maggie is gonna have some thoughts and some
Maggie's a lot of thoughts and a
feelings."
lot of feelings.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Today we are talking about. Obviously, we're going to talk about X-Men 97, Episode 5. But first, we're going to talk about Heroes is coming back, which I know that Maggie is exceptionally excited about. But before we get into that, let's talk about something that we actually talked about yesterday, that Nate and I got a chance to talk about, which was Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Yesterday, we talked about how it was seemingly being teased by Jason Blum, and then not even like maybe 2 or 3 hours later, it was fully just confirmed. No teasing, just straight up, hey, this is happening. Deal with it. So yes, we are getting Five Nights at Freddy's 2, a sequel to the movie adaptation that actually did surprisingly well, seemingly better than I feel like some people expected. So Maggie, what are your thoughts on us actually getting a sequel to this movie? Did you see the first one? I can't remember if we
No,
talked about this.
I did not see the
No?
first one. I never played the game. I've watched people play the games. I never played them myself. I kind of felt like I was outside of the age range for them when those games dropped. Um, didn't really care to see the movie. Excited for people who got to see one of their favorite games become like a live action thing. I love Josh Hutcherson. I love Elizabeth Lale, but it was not enough to get me to watch it either in theaters or at home. Also, the ever-present fear of next stuff when it comes to horror. But I have to say, this was like the most predictable sequel. It was kind of a given that there was going to be a sequel as soon as the movie was done. Also, Blumhouse really likes sequels for IP like this.
So with that being said, what would it take for you to be interested to watch this sequel? What would the sequel have to bring in to get your butt in the seat?
I couldn't even begin to tell you because I don't know enough about that franchise to even speculate. I don't know some of my favorite actors. I don't know. The first cast already has great actors in it, Matthew Lillard and Elizabeth Lale and Josh Hutcherson, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm not that demographic. So also I was afraid of the Chuck E. Cheese things when I was a kid, the animatronics. So even though I'm in my 30s now, the idea of killer animatronics and being trapped in a place with killer animatronics is just kind of a hard no for me. So
plus the ever-present threat of hashtag next stuff.
Yeah, that'll definitely do it.
I will tell you that thinking back to the first film, I don't think there was any neck stuff.
Good.
There was somebody getting bit in half, so their neck kind of went with part of their body. So kind of neck stuff. But yes, as you pointed out, this is kind of not really a surprise that we're getting this. It was pretty much already a foregone conclusion, especially when the film earned more than 291 million at the box office, which it sounds like a pretty decent chunk of change, but also when you take into consideration that the movie was released day and date on streaming at the same time, that should tell you that being able to pull in numbers like that while someone could just watch it at home at their own leisure definitely tells you that people are wanting to see this. So will they be able to repeat that with the sequel? We'll see. But I will say that when it comes to Blumhouse, I tend to have more faith in their ability to deliver, at the very least, a fun film than maybe even any other studio. They've very rarely led me astray.
Yeah.
So, we'll have that to look forward to. No information on when we might be seeing that, just outside of, it's coming in the future. And apparently they're already working on it based off of the tease that we got yesterday of Jason Blum at the Jim Henson Creature Shop, seemingly working on some of that stuff. So moving on to our next topic, which is all about Heroes, which is coming back. A Heroes reboot entitled Heroes Eclipsed was announced. And yeah, it seems that it is going to be coming in the not too distant future. Maggie.
Yes.
Huge Heroes fan.
Huge Heroes fan.
I thought that I enjoyed Heroes, but it seems like you've got me beat.
Yes. So Heroes was definitely like one of my big obsessions in the mid-aughts. I have a whole little shrine to it. I have calendars, comic books, magazines. How many shrines
do you have?
Quite a few. Okay. Comic books, magazines, calendars, trading cards, newspaper clippings from non-Heroes specific. I was subscribed to the Heroes magazine that came out monthly. And the piece de resistance of my collection is my Sylar action figure, because of course your girl loves the villain. And Sylar really was like my one true obsession at that period in time. But I loved Heroes as a whole. That was such a fantastic ensemble series. I loved Mohinder Suresh. I obviously loved Claire. I loved Elle. I loved Hero. I loved Matt Parkman. Like, just there's so many characters, and I have all of their names like burned into my head and their plot lines. And I love that series so much. And we don't talk about Heroes Reborn. We pretend that doesn't exist. And that's why I'm like, oh yeah, it's finally getting a reboot. Isn't this great?
I actually completely forgot about Heroes Reborn until you mentioned it this morning.
Yeah, we all kind of forget about it, but I think I think it is a side effect of the fact that during the 2017 eclipse and this eclipse, everybody was talking about Heroes, and so I think we all manifested it. So I was making Heroes jokes on Monday, so I do feel like I got exactly what I was asking for.
And yeah, you weren't the only person that I saw making.
Everybody was making that joke. I did not get powers unless it was the power of manifesting a reboot of Heroes.
I will say that I absolutely adored season 1 of Heroes. It was one of the first times that I can remember where I actively made the decision to tune into a show weekly. It was like one of those things where I was like, okay, Wednesdays at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Shut up. Leave me alone. I'm watching Heroes. At least I think it was Wednesdays at 8 p.m. It was Wednesdays. That was the important part. But Heroes season 1 to me is almost like a perfect season of television. Mm-hmm. And then the show unfortunately suffered from the 2007 writer's strike. And it pretty quickly dropped off the face of the planet. In my opinion, I watched season 2, was not happy with it, and then I think I watched the first episode of season 3, and I was like, nope. You know what? Heroes was a mini series to me. I'm gonna treat it like season 1 is a closed and shut case. Which honestly, you can view Heroes as just season 1 and done. But I know that you liked some of what came after.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed season 2. There's a lot to it that I still like fondly recall. I liked most of season 3, but I did end up tapping out of the series around the time that Sylar, spoilers for a show that's been out for a long time, when Sylar killed Elle, was when I decided to kind of lower my expectations. So I think I made it another 4 or 5 episodes after that. I remember there was like another plot line with Sylar where he killed somebody else that like was in his sphere, and I was like, I think I'm done, because I really liked what they were doing with like the Gabriel Gray arc with him, and then it just kind of like fell apart, and I really was only emotionally attached to Sylar at that point. And then even then, like if my emotional attachment is now like corroded by what's happening in the plot, I just noped out. I am not a completionist. I think I continued watching like sneak peeks and clips that would be posted on some of like the Heroes chat boards I was on. And then I read like recaps for the next season, and that was it. I did watch Heroes Reborn though. If only for
and that's nostalgia. All you have to say about that.
Yeah. But again, it's like, this is so funny to me. Like it's in the same realm of like being really excited to get to talk about like Punisher and Daredevil again. like professionally, like getting to edit an article about Heroes last night. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I remember being that like really dorky teenager reading all of these chat boards and reading people's articles about this franchise. And now I'm editing this and I'm getting to post about it. Like, what? So that's like, that was a fun full circle. And I'm really curious to see if this is going to be like a soft reboot or a full reboot. I wouldn't be entirely adverse to it being a full reboot and they're just exploring something completely unrelated to the characters that we knew from the original run. But at the same time, a lot of the actors who are in the original Heroes series are not entirely booked and busy right now. So I wouldn't be against seeing like Santiago Cabrera showing back up, or Milo Ventimiglia, or Hayden Panettiere, or Zachary Quinto, who is admittedly much more booked and busy than most of his peers. But there's so many characters in that, especially like season 2 opened up a lot of possibilities with a lot of extra characters and new introductions to different superpowers and characters and stuff. So I don't know. I want to see more. I want to see some more horn-rimmed glasses. Like, give it to me now.
Yeah. I'd be like, I'm on board for this, and I will definitely be checking it out. Yeah, hopefully it is. To me, I feel like I would want it to be more of a hard reboot. If they go the soft reboot route, I hope that it's something where it's like, oh, we're exploring characters who aren't tied to the events of the original show, but the events happened.
I just need them to
necessarily lean on it.
I need them to have a tagline that is as clever as "Save the cheerleader, save the world." I mean, that was like such an iconic phrase that everyone still knows. So they need to be able to replicate that magic if it is a full reboot. Yeah. And if they need any ideas, I had a whole entire story that I came up with as a self-insert superpowered person. So, I mean, if they need any ideas, call me up.
Here's an idea for an episode of Dailies. We read some of your fan fiction live.
Absolutely not. Hey, this was a fully formulated script that I wrote. I'll have you know.
That still qualifies as fan fiction.
No, it's called a spec script. So get on my level.
I'm gonna still consider it fan fiction. Like, I'm still gonna loop it in. You can glare at me all you want, Maggie. If it's all downhill after season 1, should I even watch Heroes? Mike, yes,
100%.
As I said, season 1 is self-contained enough that you can watch it, and if that's where you want to stop, you can stop there, and you're gonna feel satisfied with.
And I would still say season 2, I still think is worth it to watch. You can definitely see where there's issues with the plot line, but I still think the performers they bring in that season are so great, and some of the storylines are quite compelling. So I'd say 1 and 2 at the very least. I would not recommend 3 or 4.
So I would say watch season 1 if you vibe with it, and if you want to watch more, then you can continue. If you're like, okay, well, that was nice, that was perfect, I don't feel like I need more, then you're fine to stop. To me, as I said, season 1 is as close to a perfect season of television as you can get. And I feel like also Heroes kind of, to me, benefited from being a pre-MCU property. Because the first season of Heroes came out, that was like was that early 2007? Late 2006? Something like that. Either way, Iron Man hadn't even come out yet. The closest thing to any major superhero properties we had been the X-Men and Spider-Man films. And so, it was kind of in this sweet spot where we weren't yet burnt out on superheroes, which I sort of miss those days. Arrow says, just looked at an article and the creator was quoted as saying the reboot is happening years after the original series. So it sounds like a soft reboot or more like a revival. Yeah, that does seem to be kind of the vibe that I'm getting. But, we're early enough in the conception that it's hard to necessarily say how things are going to be in the final product. But
yeah, to me, this sounds like we're still in the early planning phases of this, and they're still trying to figure out kind of where the pieces fit together. And that to me also felt like they are waiting to see if any original cast members are interested in coming back. So I don't know. I'm hopeful. 1 or 2 wouldn't be a terrible thing.
I know that the answer is probably going to be Zachary Quinto, but of the original cast members, who would you want to see back the most?
Matt Parkman. I really liked Greg Grunberg in that role, in that entire storyline. I actually, I can't reach it right now, so I'm not going to get it. But I met him a couple years ago at a convention, and he signed my heroes calendar that I have that I kept. That had a bunch of pictures that he had never even seen from the show, and he actually like sent pictures to the rest of the cast of it, and nobody had like ever seen this, and I just had it from like 2009, and I had both him and Milo sign it. So
I know that for me, I know that her character, I'm pretty sure got smoked. But Ali Larder, I'll never say no to seeing more of her.
See, she had such a good plot in season 2. That's why I'm like, I can never say no to season 2. She had a lot more to do in that season.
I think I checked out actually when her character, spoilers, got like
so exploded. You checked out when she died. I checked out when Elle died.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to talking about our latest obsession, and the thing that I know that both you and I can't get enough of, and that is X-Men 97. You're enjoying having that figure maybe a little too much. So yes, episode 5
of girls have hobbies.
You're allowed. I didn't say you're not. Episode 5 of X-Men 97 came out on Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be spoilering it a little bit, but before we get into the spoilers, Maggie, really quick, give your general feelings on it. General non-spoiler feelings.
Pain.
Yeah, I figured that would pretty well sum it up. This is a very intense episode, so if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it, and you're going to be left with some feelings. And if you aren't left with some feelings, please tell me what it's like to be such a cold and heartless monster.
Don't antagonize our listeners, John.
Hey, you know what? Even negative engagement is good engagement. Anyways, with that, we are going to get into our spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen the episode, this is where you get off. However, if you have seen the episode, feel free to give your thoughts in the chat, and let us know what you thought about the episode. So this episode was pretty much all about everyone's favorite love triangle, Rogue, Gambit, and Magneto. Is it okay, here's something that I want to, this might be a little bit of a tangent that I'm going to get off on. The term love triangle, does that phrase, to me, I don't know if that necessarily works in situations like this, because the relationship between Gambit and
touching, yes.
Yeah, the relationship between Gambit and Magneto doesn't quite work as a triangle. It's more like
even though there's been like 3 jokes about how it could work.
Okay, outside of your brain.
I'm sorry, there's literally in-canon jokes about it if you are paying attention.
I know.
Including at the very top of this episode. But no, it's more of a love tent.
Yeah.
As I call it.
I love flying V. I love I'm trying to think of other like V-shaped things.
A love tent is what we call it.
Okay, fine. That's fair. I don't know the terminology. I'm not as deeply into like the shipping culture as you are. So yes, it's all about those 3. They go to Genosha because the mutant nation is being welcomed into the UN, which is a pretty big deal. However, stuff very quickly goes off the rails. Meanwhile, the X-Men are being interviewed at the X-Mansion, and Cyclops has a little bit of a tizzy. Understandably, he's going through some stuff. And that's when we get a little bit of Jean Grey Wolverine,
another love tent
stuff going on. That's like your classic love tent right there.
But in the comics, also love triangle. Those points on the triangle have touched.
I'm not. Your choice of wording there is what kind of that left me with a mental image.
It's been in the comics.
So yes, but anyways, the main brunt of the episode. You threw me off so bad right now. Genosha actually winds up getting attacked. But before that, Magneto is asked to rule Genosha because they figure, like, hey, if Charles Xavier trusts you enough to put you in charge of the X-Men, that probably means that he trusts you enough to lead a nation, because apparently that's how that works. And of course, Magneto being Magneto, he's like, I feel like I need to have somebody by my side that the public can trust more than me. And he asks Rogue to be his queen. This leads to a very emotional scene between Rogue and Gambit, which is where I want to start our discussion in earnest.
Oh, okay.
That scene, to me, I felt Gambit in that moment. My favorite part of that scene is the fact that he is just sitting there throwing playing cards into the fire.
Pretty true to his character, yeah.
What did you think of that scene? That was a big emotional climax.
I was paying more attention to the flashbacks, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I was honestly, I felt like, despite the fact that ultimately we all lost in this scenario, in this episode, I felt like I was winning at every front. Like, as somebody who actively ships Rami, which is Rogue, and Gambit, somebody who actively ships Rogue and Magneto, I felt like I was winning. As somebody who ships Logan and Jean, I was winning. As somebody who was like living for the drama of the Madeline Scott Jean situation, also winning. So it basically, every way I looked, unlike Gambit, the cards were in my favor. So like to keep my options open. But no, I think that all of these scenes throughout this episode in particular, the moments with Rogue and Gambit talking about their relationship or not relationship, since apparently Rogue did not want labels or commitment, which I was like, yeah, girl, go for that. And then, so you have this beautiful moment of Gambit, like very easily taking being let down, and like respecting Rogue. And then you have the same thing when Rogue lets down Magneto and he also understands it. And I really like that both men were not like jealous or bitter or like mean, that it was a very like non-toxic reaction to this. It put Rogue's feelings and emotions and wants first. And then ultimately both men sacrificed themselves for her happiness, thinking that she had chosen the other one, which I think is such a good setup for Rogue's character. And ultimately, I'm a Rogue girl through and through. I want her to be happy. And I am devastated that she has lost both of them, seemingly, in this moment. And I cannot wait to see where her arc goes, because I know that a lot of people were like, oh, I don't like that they're reducing her to like this part of a love triangle thing. And I was fine with that, obviously, but I do like now that it's more about taking that love triangle dynamic and giving her something like really meaty to explore for the rest of the season and probably into season 2 as well. Yeah. And I also think that it's an interesting play on the fact that like in the comics, she's had to choose between them before, and some of the comic runs where that is a thing. And I like that the stakes for that choice were so much higher here and had such like higher capacity for like pain. Yeah. I'm really into that.
So you mentioned the flashbacks. I suppose we should get into this. There's been a lot of discussion around the Rogue Magneto flashbacks, and I know how you feel about it.
That she is a 20-year-old
your tweets.
Canonically in her 20s.
Yeah. So you can let the audience know like what your full thing is. But right now, a lot of the discussion around it is there seems to be two things that people are raising some red flags about. There is like the sort of the way that it can be read is grooming. Again, the
we're not going there.
Throws that, and then there is the power dynamic issue that throws up some red flags. What are your thoughts on both of those?
That I think that we need to stop turning fandom into activism and using words that are real issues in real life and applying them to situations where they're not technically applicable, because she is a 20-something-year-old woman in those flashbacks. Also completely removes her agency from the situation, which I am like actively against the way that fandom and discourse infantilizes female characters. And also Magneto has done significantly worse things, and the fact that this is the thing that are people like, oh my god, I can't believe this like full-grown man and full-grown woman had a thing, and not the fact that like he wants to kill all of humankind. Like, also it's X-Men. You can find like 110 even weirder dynamics in those comics. So
like, here's the thing. I'm not gonna sit here and say that like, yeah, there are worse things. To me, the grooming thing, like, I'm just like, no, that's just no. I can kind of, with the initial way that it's presented, I can understand why it would throw up some initial red flags, but then when you think about it for longer than about 3 seconds, you're like, okay, no, because just the way that it's presented, because it's like her mom introducing her to Magneto, you can read it in a certain way, and I'm like, but then her age disqualifies that entirely. The power dynamic to me is the one that seems to have a little bit more validity in my eyes. I still am not necessarily, I'm not going to put very much weight behind it, but him being a mentor figure gives him some authority and does raise some red flags. Not enough for me to like really be too bothered by it, but I can understand why people would read the situation that way. But you definitely do have a point that there is, you know, far worse things that Magneto has done, and there are ways that we should be reading this situation that not necessarily, that we don't normally do. If any of what I just said made sense, it didn't just sound like a bunch of rambling bullcrap, which I tend to do sometimes. But yeah, so that gives us a little bit of context about their actual relationship, which this is one thing about their relationship so far this season that I felt has been lacking, is that we didn't have a look at where their relationship started, how it sort of got to where it is now. So now we have that context. To me, that makes their pairing a little bit, I'm a little bit more on board with them, because I'll admit that Magneto Rogue, I wasn't really big into that coupling. Maybe I'm a ride or die. What is it called? A rogue,
Rami.
Rami. Sure. Maybe I'm just a ride or die Rami, but it sounds like I'm talking about, anyways. But this one at least provides a little bit of context. And as you pointed out, yes, the fact that both men handle being rejected by her so respectfully, to me, speaks volumes of both of their relationships and just this love tent in general.
Indeed.
Indubitably. But yes, so then Genosha is attacked by a bunch of sentinels, including a giant, like, kaiju sized sentinel with multiple heads, and stuff goes down. A lot of people get smoked. Like, there are a ton.
There's a long list of dead people at the end of this episode.
Mutants are just dropping left and right.
Including Madeline. Madeline is dead. I'm like, how do you kill the Goblin Queen? We've had her for 2 weeks and you killed her?
See, I'm not convinced that she's actually dead.
Oh no, like, the writer confirmed she's smoked. She's gone.
She's like dead.
Oh, she's dead.
Well, then I feel like that's a waste of her story.
I was like,
because to me that means like I felt like she still had plenty of story left, and
especially with this whole like her and Scott have been having their long distance.
Yeah, plus Cable shows up for a mo to like talk to her and be like, "Hey, stuff's going down." And then
so Madeline's dead. Shaw appears to be dead, or he's just resting his eyes.
Emma Frost also seems to have been messed up.
Yeah, really sure luckily Kurt's not dead.
He was on death's door. He was pretty bad.
Who else?
There's all those, and then there's just countless unnamed mutants. I know, like recognizable but unnamed mutants.
I know,
including Jello skeleton guy, who I forget. He is a character. I just don't remember his name. But yeah, a whole bunch of people get killed, and then of course our 3 X-Men jump into action, and it doesn't go super well.
Real bad. Like something really not cool happened.
It goes pretty bad. I will say something really cool does happen, and that is them jumping in to help the Morlocks, which especially was a nice moment given Gambit's connection to them in the comics. He has a history with the Morlocks that isn't exactly stellar, so getting to see him actively saving the Morlocks was pretty great. But sadly, the Morlocks, along with Magneto, get blasted At least it looks like they get blasted. We don't see any bodies, so the usual story of if you don't see a body, they're probably not dead. But then, of course, Gambit. We saw a body there. He gets probably one of the coolest moments in the entire season.
I'll
that
definitely
is the
remember it.
most badass way to go, where he actually gets up close and he energizes the giant sentinel, and of course it explodes because Gambit's powers, but it leaves us with a freshly corpseified Remy.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was going to die from being skewered. So at least he went out in a blaze of glory. Yeah, I was pretty emotional about that.
I'd understand that.
I love Gambit. I've loved Gambit basically as long as I can feasibly remember, and it hurt even worse to read the writer's post that he put up yesterday where he was talking about like they specifically designed Gambit this season for everyone to fall in love with him so that his death would be even more traumatizing. Should have seen that one coming from a mile away as soon as I saw that little crop top of his. And
the crop top was a sign. Oh, it's a man in a crop top. He's gonna die.
Well, okay, but literally though, because his side is exposed, and that's where he gets stabbed through. Like, there's so much like visual cues there that I'm just like, okay, well, that's not cool. And we also know from the trailer that was released that there is going to be a funeral for someone, maybe a lot of someone's. But yeah, I am in a fragile state of mind, much like Rogue. But I was far more devastated, I think, by Magneto's death, specifically because he got a hero's death. Seemingly, again, no body, not dead.
I'm gonna guess that he's not gone.
Yeah, like I'm of two like current thought processes for this. Like, I do want him to be dead alongside Gambit because then it keeps the stakes very high for that situation and where this kind of journey can go. But at the same time, like, he is an Omega level mutant, and I do think that there are ways for him to not be dead. And I obviously don't want this fine looking man to be dead, especially when there is still so much for like a heroic arc for him that I think has more legs going forward, especially as now he will be put to a test. And that's why I think that I don't know what I want yet in terms of where this is going, because I think now that we've had this horrific attack on the mutants that completely backs up Magneto's feelings about humans, and his distrust, there's a part of me that wants to see him be there to experience that, and then also to see him kind of have to war with his two kind of thoughts of mind currently of like, everything that I believe has been proven right on like a devastating level, but also like I've now also seen that like we do have to find a way to work together. But at the same time, I also want to see the X-Men grappling with realizing that Magneto was right and having to apply his logic without him there to see it. And so like there's a really interesting story there as well. And that's why I'm like, I want him to be dead, but I don't want him to be dead. And not even just for like shipping purposes. I genuinely love Magneto and agree with a lot of the signs that say Magneto was right in that, because it's proven that his feelings about humans not being trustworthy is literally the thesis of this entire episode.
Yeah. I think that, so I don't for a second think that he's actually gone. I think that he might I'd be surprised if he shows up next episode. Like, he'll be gone at least for a little bit, but I think he is going to come back. And if I had to venture a guess, he's going to come back much more vengeful and a whole lot less okay with humans. Just because, I understand how comics work, and I understand that at a certain point we're going to have to return to a status quo, and the status quo is Magneto and the X-Men being at odds with each other. However, that being said, Scott this episode was showing some pretty anti-human behavior.
I know. I was like, Scott is.
And Scott also has had some moments in the comics where he's done some stuff. Let's not forget the moment when he got a hold of the Phoenix and proceeded to mess everybody up, including a newly resurrected Charles Xavier, who he just smoked with no hesitation at all. So they could go a few different ways with it. It could be I am interested to see what is going to happen. I do definitely feel like this is going to be a watershed moment in the series and is going to dictate how people are going to behave moving forward, not just because obviously we have a major main cast member death, but also just because this is a cataclysmic event that is going to rock the world.
The teaser for what's to come that dropped mere minutes before this episode went up. I don't think you've gotten to see it yet.
I saw the thumbnail on Twitter and I didn't click on it.
Yeah, there's can I talk about it? Can I talk
about
go for
it?
Okay. So Captain America's shield is in it. And I'm like, please give me the like Avengers of this universe in this, because I have such a like fondness for like the animated Avengers stuff that we used to get. Like I need that. I need that team up. And like and there's stuff from the comics that also goes very nicely with where Scott could be going with the Avengers, that I'm like, my brain is just like whirring with potential. And it's like blink and you miss it moment in the trailer that kind of basically ends on it with the Captain America shield. But we also got like, it also seems like obviously Sinister is involved. It also implies that Apocalypse might be back, which obviously red herring that we got with Wolverine thinking that when Madeline was going to labor. And then obviously
Apocalypse.
Yeah. So like there seems like they're teasing like these three big foes.
What do you think the over-under is if Apocalypse does show up, that's how we get Gambit back, because he brings Gambit back as one of his horsemen?
Yeah, that's exactly what everybody is essentially assuming. Yeah. And there is the really good arc in the comics where Rogue like takes the evil out of him from that plot line. So I would be here for that. Yeah. Like I said,
and this show's been telling a lot of comic stories in very concise ways. So anything that's happened in the comics, I feel at this point, is on the table. What are the chances you think that this season, like I think that this wouldn't be a like one episode thing, but what if this season sets us up for a season 2 Avengers versus X-Men?
I'd be down.
Like, obviously we haven't had House of M, so the story can't be exactly the same, but
yeah,
with us getting a bitter and like kind of hating humans Scott, we could be headed in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down for that in a very big way. Basically, I like anytime the Avengers being attacked. But also, I'm just really excited to see like the potential that we're getting this 1990s era Avengers. It brings me no shortage of joy, because I think there is so much to be done in the animated world with these characters. And especially since it's in isolation from the MCU, but also could set up things that they could play with. I mean, I would love, I like, again, like I've said before, I love what they're doing with Fantastic Four and that being set in the 60s. And I like the idea that they could play with these storylines in isolation in different media. Because I think that's a really great way to break free of having to grapple with a lot of things that modern technology makes difficult for a lot of superhero stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just really, really excited.
It could also be a cool way, because obviously the show has been, fairly successful. It's been a pretty big hit with fans. It could be an interesting way for them to potentially backdoor pilot like revivals of their old Spider-Man show, the old Iron Man show, a lot of these old cartoons from the 90s. They could bring those characters back in an Avengers versus X-Men plotline.
Yeah.
And then use that as a jumping off point to spin off
animated Zemo.
You could get animated Zemo. You're giddy like a schoolgirl over there, just like Zemo. That would be.
I'm actually enrolled in Xavier's school.
That would be pretty rad. But I think that would be
funny that like my two favorite characters are Magneto, who's like, I want to rid the world of humans, and Zemo, who's like, I want to rid the world of people with superpowers. Just like, and they both wear purple.
Two contradictory and yet somewhat similar.
And me in the middle, like
your taste in fictional men. So very uniquely you, Maggie. So that was our thoughts on X-Men 97. Let's go to the chat. Let's read what some other people. We kind of want to wrap this up here in a sec, but taking a look at what we got. I wish I wasn't frustrated with the show. Pacing is breakneck speed. I've heard a couple of people say the same thing. The fact that we get through comic stories in like a single episode.
And I would say, as a counter to that, I would implore you to rewatch the animated series. That show blows through plot lines so quickly. And I do not remember it being the case when I was a kid watching this. But rewatching it now as an adult, I'm just like, wow, okay, they absolutely match the pacing par for the course between the two series. It's insane.
Like Dark Phoenix was like,
it was 3 episodes.
There was a bunch of setup, but then there was like 3 episodes of the actual arc.
And they're 15-minute episodes, so it's essentially like maybe 35, 40 minutes of storytelling. And now we're getting like 30-ish minute episodes.
At this point, I feel like it's almost like a symptom of our current television like landscape, where we're so used to story arcs being spread across an entire season as opposed to
because we're no longer getting long seasons. We're getting 6 episodes or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
So
that being said, we're only getting 10 episodes of this.
Yeah, this wraps up like May 16th or something. And the last 3, I think, might be dropping all on the same day. I can't remember. Because the last 3 are a single episode title. I don't know.
Yeah. We can only anticipate they're going to undo this at the end of the season because we obviously see Cable, and that means time travel. I think that just because there is time travel doesn't mean that that's going to be used as a
also
crutch.
The Watcher was watching.
The Watcher was watching. I like if you didn't catch that, go back and rewatch the episode.
Yeah.
I'm not going to point out when it is, but I will say it's an establishing shot.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get an episode between now and the culminating stuff of this season that is Cable trying to undo this, and we see this episode from different points of view as he's trying to stop it.
Yeah. Although here's the thing, we assume that Cable was, when he was saying like, oh, bad stuff's coming, and all that, we assume that he was talking about this.
Yeah.
But he could be talking about something else.
I think he's talking about Apocalypse because he said he's coming.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who? Is it Sinister? Is it Apocalypse? Is it somebody else? Like, who is coming? Because it's clearly not the Sentinels that he's talking about. I think that was just like it coincided. Yeah. Oh man, and to stop the music, that whole entire line like just haunted me. And the fact that nobody could hear him, like.
I sure hope they add Deadpool so he kidnaps the entire season. No, I don't think we're gonna see Deadpool in X-Men 97. And if we do, it'll be like a 1-episode thing. I just think that he's too overwhelming of a personality that he would just completely derail the entire show if he wound up becoming like a reoccurring cast member. It'd be fun, but I think that's a 1-episode thing.
As our closing thing, I think we should recognize Arrow Maxwell's comment there because I am in agreement with that one.
Exactly. The way Marvel released the Zemo Club video on loop, they need to do that with Magneto and Rogue dancing for the Ace of Base tunes on loop.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think I would enjoy that as much as the Zemo Club video.
Okay, well, that's you.
Like such a fantastically memeable video. Whereas the Magneto Rogue one, like there was an emotional element to it that I just don't think works on a loop.
I don't know. I played it on a loop, so.
Well. That's fair. And with that, we're going to end today's episode. Maggie, you have anything coming down the pipeline that you want to plug?
Yes, sometime over the weekend, maybe tomorrow, I'll be dropping the interviews I just did with the cast of Ghosts. I got to go to the Library of Congress and do a really fun event with them where they were kind of looking at some artifacts tied to their characters. And I got to have some really great interviews with them. And was a really fun experience. And I love that cast so much. So very excited about that. And of course, I've got my Rebel Moon junket coming down the line, as well as my Tattooist of Auschwitz interviews that I actually did yesterday. Really emotional morning to go from watching X-Men 97 to that junket. So I'm really excited for that. I actually just before we started this got my footage back from Rebel Moon. So I'm going to go watch that like right now and relive those interviews. They're embargoed for a couple more weeks.
How many Rebel Moon interviews were there?
4, I believe.
That's a pretty solid amount of content.
Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4. This last 2 weeks has been a blur.
That's funny because that's the same number of fans of Rebel Moon that there are.
For legal reasons, that is John's opinion.
Anyways, with that, that's where we're going to end the show. Go ahead and go over to Collider.com. Check out all the fantastic interviews that Maggie has coming and just all the rest of the stuff that the team is putting out. There's some great stuff going out. Errol, I would love to talk about the Fallout series, but that's a discussion for another day because I've got a lot of thoughts about it. So we will talk about that some other time. But with that, we will call it good. Tomorrow, I believe, is you and Perry.
It is.
Is that too on the schedule?
Very
it's
excited.
It's going to be great to see Perry after her long trip away. I'm excited to hear what she has to say about all that. So with that, be sure to tune in for that tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad place. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening, and we'll catch you next time.